Hi, so in this presentation, we're going to be going on to the third of our modules. So we've talked about phonology, we've talked about morphology. I gave you the teaser that later in the semester we're going to be looking at the interface between the two, which we call morphophonology. Now we're going to be looking at syntax, which is the study of the structure of sentences, how sentences get put together. And the real key here, what we're going to be focusing on, is the idea that words aren't just simply combined together one after the other. Oftentimes we kind of think about, that it's not as though we were just stringing beads, right? So that would be the case if we were just stringing one word, and then the next word, and then the next word, and then the next word. Now, clearly, at some level, we're doing that. Right? You could argue that phonologically, we're certainly doing that. There is an order to the words. There is a sound order. One word follows another. However, what we're going to argue is that the level of the syntax, this level, there's another layer to it, another structural layer, what we're going to call a hierarchical layer to it, that is, vertical rather than purely horizontal. And so I'm going to be trying to argue for that in this little segment here. Let me clear what I've got, and then I'll go on to the next slide. And our sentence that we're going to be looking at is, "Those assholes ate my donuts." Perfectly fine sentence. And clearly, again, we've got this linear order, the beads on the string idea. Those assholes ate my donuts. But the point is that that's not how we actually process this sentence. So we don't process it one word at a time. So in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to be looking at this first two words, right? Those assholes. And my question is, what can replace those assholes? What can we put in this position and still have a grammatical sentence? Right? So it can't be, just anything. You can't say, "the ate my donuts." That's not grammatical. You couldn't say, "purple ate my donuts." Right? It's got to be something that's going to lead to a grammatical sentence that all native speakers of English are going to agree, yep, that's grammatical. But it doesn't have to mean the same thing. When we're talking about syntax, the meaning isn't nearly as important to us as just that it combines together the right way to form what everybody agrees is a sentence. So we don't care about the meaning here. You can completely change the meaning, but I want it to still be a grammatical sentence. So whatever can fit in this little slot here, make a grammatical sentence. I'm going to give you some time to think about this. This time, rather than sitting here and staring at the screen blankly, I'm going to actually move out of the frame because I tend to get twitchy when I'm not doing anything. So if I'm just staring at the screen, my face makes all sorts of weird expressions and you will be amused, and that's not good because then you won't be actually coming up with words to replace those assholes. So I'll give you a minute or two to think about words to replace it, and then I'll come back. Okay, I hope that was enough time for you. So again, we're looking at those assholes, what can replace those assholes. And I imagine, think I can probably guess some of the things you probably came up with. So one thing that people usually come up with is something like those motherfuckers ate my donuts. Okay. How about those rat bastards ate my donuts? Or those jerks ate my donuts. We could go on and on. Any slur is going to work there right after those. All right, good enough. But not terribly interesting, right? Because that's just replacing this one word here with any slur. And so we can say, well, okay, any slur would work there. And in fact, of course, any noun is going to work there for that matter. Right? So we could say those cats. Or we could say those dogs. Or we could say those girls. Or we could say those doors. Get a little bit silly. All right. Again, not that interesting. But one thing we can start seeing here is, well, we could put other things in there instead of those. So, for example, we could say 1%ers ate my donuts, right? So now we've got a the instead of those, and we're getting a little metaphorical here. The 1%ers ate my donuts. We could say a monster ate my donuts. We could say some girls ate my donuts. And we could go on and on there as well. So now we see, not only can we have a noun here, any noun practically will work, but we can also have what are called articles, right? So we could have those, we could have these, we could have the, we could have this, we could have that, we could have some, and so on. So now we can start seeing different patterns, but of course, those aren't the only things. We can get more and more imaginative. We could say Barack Obama ate my donuts. Or we could say, let's try to get some equity here between the parties. Barack Obama ate my donuts. John Boehner ate my donuts. Pretty much any proper name is going to work here. Peter ate my donuts. Sarah ate my donuts. Gertrude ate my donuts. Grant ate my donuts, and so on and so on and so on. So proper names are going to fit as well. Well, another one that you probably thought of is they. And of course, if they works, then she ate my donuts will work. And he, and I, and you, right? We can go on and on and on there in terms of these pronouns as well. It ate my donuts. Right? Not hard. But the one that we usually get, so I've been using this as an example for years now, not always assholes. In my non-swearing classes, I don't get to use assholes. I have to put in some other word. But the thing is that what I always get is somebody says, those, oops, not copies, those cops. Those cops ate my donuts. For some reason, whenever donut eating comes up, people think of cops. My apologies to any people in the audience who happen to be police officers. For whatever reason, my students always think of cops when it comes to donuts. Now, what's interesting to me about this, though, is that then we can start modifying those cops. We can start thinking of words that we can fit inside of there. So Well, what things can we talk about? Cops. Well, perhaps those tall cops. Or maybe they are ugly. And maybe they're heroic. And maybe they have long hair. And maybe they are heavy set. And for all I know, maybe they are purple as well. Let me move this so. Oops. Alright, so this didn't work as well as I thought it would, but you get the idea. So we can keep adding as many adjectives as we want between those and cops. We could also put things between those and assholes, like those smelly assholes, those Calipigian assholes. That's a great word. That's a great adjective. Look it up if you don't know what it means. Calipigian, C-A-L-I-P-Y-G-E-A-N. It's one of my favorite words in the entire English language. Those Calipigian assholes ate my donuts. Those nasty, smelly Calipigian purple assholes ate my donuts. We could go on and on and on. And the point here is that there's really no limit to the number of adjectives that you could put in there, right? So right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if there's 6, there's no reason we couldn't have 7. If there were 7, there's no reason we couldn't have 8. If there were 8, then there's no reason we can't have 9, and so on and so on, ad infinitum. You get the picture, right? So we can keep adding on words in there. That means then that whatever we put in this position, those assholes, there's an unlimited number of things that we can put in there, that we can substitute that with. But what's important is that they're all of the same sort, that everything that we put in there is the same kind of thing. It forms a chunk, it forms a unit, and that's the way that we read. So when we read something, or we hear it, we process it in a certain way. We process it in chunks. So now, let me go on. And what I want to do is do the same sort of thing we did with the morphology, where we show how things combine together. But now the crucial thing is that we're seeing that those assholes are creating a chunk here, and my donuts is also creating a chunk. Eat my donuts forms yet another chunk, and then finally, we get this one large chunk, the sentence itself, right? And that's the way that we process it. And in fact, we can demonstrate that. So when somebody's reading, what we find is that they don't read it word by word, right? So they don't read, those assholes ate my donuts. That's not the way we read. In fact, we can see that, if we watch eye tracking software, the eyes are constantly going back and forth when reading a sentence, a single sentence. It's moving around, identifying the parts of the sentence, those chunks that combine together to form the larger sentence. We're not aware that we're doing it, but our mind does it automatically and very quickly. And the point is that whatever we put in this position is going to be a unit of a certain sort. And so I think of this kind of like building a house, right? That you don't build a house just by putting one brick next to another. Rather, you have to build them into larger pieces. They form walls. And then you combine those walls together and you form a roof. And then you combine that with the walls. And there's a floor, and there's a door, and there's windows. And all of these things combine together in a complex way to form this one large structure. And that's what's going on here. And so you can think of this as being kind of like your wall. And if this is a wall, well, this is a wall too. It behaves the same way. It's got the same pieces put together in the same manner. And so, in fact, we find substitutability. So anything that you put here could go here, right? So you could say those assholes ate the tall Calipigian cops. You could say, my donuts ate those assholes. Might be a little absurd, hard to imagine what that would mean, but it's perfectly grammatical, right? And that's the point. And so, a little bit later in the semester, we're going to be doing this kind of stuff, looking at swear words and seeing how they behave in a larger sentence. And that idea of substitutability, of seeing whether two things behave the same way, and if they behave the same way, then we're going to say that they are the same type. And if they don't behave the same way, then they must not be the same type. And that's what we're going to be doing later in the semester, because a lot of times you hear people say things like the word fuck can be used as any part of speech. Well, if that were true, that would be a pretty staggering thing. Turns out it's not true. And it turns out the fuck is fairly complicated in what it can function as. And what we're going to look at is, whether it always acts as a verb, whether it can be a noun, can be an adjective, can be an adverb, and so on. We're going to be looking at what are these different parts of speech and how we can recognize when they're acting as something like that, and how we can recognize when it's not acting as what we think it is.